Welcome to Terra and Friends Unedited. In this season, which is fall here in beautiful Western North Carolina, many things are changing and transforming, but some things sadly are not changing in our area. And I'm happy to have Monroe Gilmour here of WINSEB with me to discuss some of the changes that are not happening in a way that we would hope in the year 2010. And I'm specifically speaking of instances of bigotry. Monroe, thank you for joining me again today. So Monroe you're the founder of Western North Carolina Citizens for an End to Institutional Bigotry.
Correct.
Otherwise known as WINSEB.
Right.
And if you would it's been a year since you were here. Last time already, the time has flown.
That's right.
So would you mind reminding us
Okay.
of your organization and how it started?
Right. Well, WINSEB, or Western North Carolina Citizens for an End to Institutional Bigotry, as you mentioned, it really came together back in 1991. It came together after an incident that happened a little bit before that, where a black guest of a white child at the Biltmore Forest Country Club was removed from a swimming party. And Dwight and Dolly Mullen, who are at UNCA now, they wrote a letter to the paper about it, and we saw it and began working on that issue. Because at the time, the club did not allow blacks or Jews as guests, much less members. And so we began working actually with some of the members of the club who also were appalled that that was still the case in 1990 at the time. And anyway, over time, we felt we needed to put an ad in the paper to draw attention to it. Their annual meeting was coming up, and the philanthropist Julian Price, who is credited with reviving downtown Asheville, he gave us $1,000 to put the ad in the paper. And it was kind of interesting because when we did it, we put on the top of the ad, we had, "Do you belong to the Biltmore Forest Country Club?" But they would not print it like that. And we found out later that the lawyers involved were members of that club. But they did
protected
print it,
themselves.
Right. They did print it when the heading was, "Do you belong to a discriminatory country club?" And we wanted people to share their experiences at the club. And so down at the bottom, we had a little coupon that you could cut out and send in with your experiences. And we needed a place to send it, and we wanted them to know exactly what the issue was, and we didn't want some vague name, so we chose this name, not intending it to be the name of an organization that would go on. It's almost 20 years now. But that is the origin of the name and of the organization.
So it originated as a way to specifically stand up and fight the racial injustice.
Right, and it wasn't that we wanted to be guests or wanted to be members, but we felt like if leaders of the community are saying one thing when they're at the United Way and saying something completely different in how they were living their personal lives, if those leaders have institutions like that, it diminishes the whole community. Right. And so happily, the club did vote shortly after that ad. They voted to cease those practices and put a non-discriminatory clause in their policy. And so
I bet that was slow change from...
Well, actually there was an ovation from the membership. I think there were some old dinosaurs that were trying to retain the old ways, but that the younger people there saw that it's a different world and they needed to be part of it. And they did it publicly, and we're very pleased that they did.
Oh, that's wonderful that the start of your organization had its roots in such a strong community building.
Right, right. And I think some of them realized that philosophy, that it should be consistent. I mean, and our group is not a large one, but what we've tried to do is chip away at little things that define who we are as a community. And it's amazing what individuals can do and a small group of people can do when they are thoughtfully approaching issues like that.
I remember last year when you came, I think you came on this show in November and shared with me about some of the Indian mascot issues locally, and that was all news to me. Brand,
Yeah,
I'd never
well,
even thought of that.
You know, in 1996, 97, when Don and Pat Merzlack and Bruce Two Eagles and some of the local American Indians raised that issue at Irwin High School, it was new to me also. But they taught me a lot, and since then, 40 schools around the state have changed their Indian mascots, including the Charlotte-Mecklenburg system, the Guilford County system, and then schools in various systems around the state. And I think some people don't understand why Indians are concerned about that, and it really just quickly, so that our viewers do understand why that's an issue. For American Indians, they feel that this is a trivialization of their culture and a misuse of their religious iconography, the feather, the fire, the drum, all of those things. And so, as Don Merzlack said, going to a school down in South Carolina that had a big deal with their Indian mascot, he said he looked down there and he felt like someone had come into his home and stolen his property. And so that message is getting out, and the State Board of Education has urged schools around the state to reconsider why they are doing it. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights has called on all non-native schools to change their mascot.
Really? Wow. Well, this is wonderful progress
So
for that community.
It will happen. It's, we have changed 40, but we have another 33 to go. And so we're keeping at it. Just this year, 4 or 5 changed here in North Carolina.
And I know that WINSEB was, and you personally, were very involved with making those changes happen. So.
Yeah, I think we have a sub-project called the North Carolina Mascot Action Education and Action Group. And that group has led the effort and kept the issue alive and keep nudging it forward throughout the state.
Wow.
And maybe I ought to say broadly what we do. I don't know if people can see this, but we do 3 things basically. We stand with individual victims of hate activity and hate crimes, such as we're going to talk today. We also monitor bigotry and hate crimes in Western North Carolina and track hate groups and white supremacists in the region, and have a website that has information about that. And then we have sort of a community accountability teams that nudge institutions toward greater diversity and greater intentionality in how they address diversity issues. And we've worked at Mission Hospital for the last 13 or 14 years, and happily they have a diversity officer now, and they have a diversity committee within the hospital that looks at all kinds of things. An interesting one that I think with white privilege, we often don't think about anybody's needs but our own, even subconsciously. Well, one of the things that came up in the diversity committee meetings at the hospital was the fact that the little, I'm not sure what they call them, the toiletry kits that people get when they come in as a patient, that those did not have combs that were adequate for black hair. And so they contracted with a company that made combs that were strong enough and the type that were needed, and so that those are now available for patients at Mission Hospital.
It's interesting, some of those little things that
little
are
things
important
that cumulatively,
changes.
They cumulatively define how sensitive we are to all of our differences.
Lately, I've been more aware, filling out forms on papers, how so many forms, maybe without even meaning to, convey a certain message about what should be standard. The forms will often say husband, wife, or
Yeah.
spouse, rather than allowing for alternative
Right.
options. And that would apply to anyone, not just members of,
Yeah.
you know, the LGBT
Right.
community, but even people who have other non-traditional home situations in a school
Yes.
would feel a little bit outcast when you don't find a spot on the form for what you are,
Right.
or you
And
have
that
to check
applies-
divorced and you feel stigmatized by having to put.
Right. That applies to religious faiths also. I know
Definitely.
when my kids started school, the form that you filled out the first day, it asked what church you go to.
Right.
And they weren't trying to pin you down, but they wanted to be able to be sensitive to the child's background. But, you know, for some people that just presumes a Christian faith, and there are many faiths around. So those kind of wordings, you know, also have changed.
Yeah, I really appreciated hearing about what you at the Unitarian Universalist Church, how you intentionally work with the youth to expose them to different religions.
Yep, they have a neighboring faiths program in that that has the kids, usually in middle school, go around. I know I'm not a teacher this time, but they're doing that right now. And I think they've gone to a synagogue for a Friday evening service, Shabbat, and they'll go to the Baha'i and Baptists and a whole lot of different faiths to get a sense of that. It is a great thing. It's great fun to be a teacher in it.
Well, I think that right there is really this same issue that we keep coming back to, this point of, can we see the other? Can we connect with and recognize ourselves as being connected to others in a way that allows us to value the differences in others? But it seems as if still many people struggle with that basic ability to be able to have a connection or value the differences, and instead they view the other as
Right.
a problem,
Right.
a threat, maybe.
And that gets accentuated in tough economic times, which may play a role in the kind of hate activity that we have seen even here locally. And there's a fear of change. There's a fear that what I have is being taken. Even remembering that mascot fight from 10, 11 years ago, I always remember this time a woman in the booster club at a school said she felt like outsiders had come in and were taking her heritage and her culture by taking, and the Indians said, wait a minute, I think you got something backwards there.
The ultimate irony.
But she was being very sincere and felt that inside. And I think that we have to pay attention to where she is in order to help her come over to realizing the reality of what she's saying.
Of course, her attachment, which was, she felt that as a genuine loss, but it was really a sentimental attachment rather than,
yes,
you know, a cultural
reality for her, for generations in
kind
her
of
family.
Yes.
Right.
So, bringing us to the topic today at hand, and I'm so grateful that you could come in and talk about this, because it's been so disturbing to hear what's going on in the news and to think we're in 2010 and these instances that I read about as a child and thought were long gone are right here in our backyard. And I know that you've been involved with this from the beginning. I hope that you can share with us what's going on in the community and what we can do to support the.
And I think first, I think we do have to realize, you know, we're a county of almost 200,000 people, and so we don't want to jump to conclusions that everything is bad because perhaps 3 or 4 people have taken actions that that deservedly get a lot of attention, but they